a simple square canvas, 1024 by 1024, and I'm going to sketch out my character, which is just going to be a little dude in a cup suit. So you'll notice I'm using Sketchbook for this. I'm also drawing on my tablet. I just prefer drawing on my tablet and in Sketchbook. I quite like it. It's sort of quick and easy. But ultimately, whatever software you choose to use should work perfectly fine. I always like to do my initial sketch just on all on one layer. Then usually make it quite pencily, quite light before I draw over it. And just make sure you're using lots of different layers to start with. You can always merge and group later on. I'm just going to put my entire cup on one layer and work from there. So what I'm doing with the color here is basically I'm just coloring on one layer underneath, and then I'll be merging those layers together. And the reason I'm doing this is because it means you don't have to worry so much around, if you've got like black edges. So in this kind of style, if I was drawing all on the same layer, I'd have to be concerned about, not drawing over the black edges. But with this method, you're able to just draw directly underneath, and then when you merge them together, all that information will just get hidden and replaced. And as well, if you go outside, and you'll notice, like I say, I'm going outside the lines, I'll be able to just use the selection tool as well, the magic wand, just to grab everything outside and delete it as well. So it is quite a quick method for colouring. So again, I think I've mentioned this I've mentioned this multiple times, but what is important with this process is making sure everything that you're going to animate is going to be on its own separate layer. So every part that moves wants to be on its own layer. It's also beneficial to sometimes name these as you're going. So as you can see in my example, then I'm drawing the arm, the upper arm, then I'll be drawing the lower arm, then the hand, and all of those are on separate layers because they'll all be able to move independently. Now, you could use the puppet bin tools, or you could use like other sort of ways of animating, but for this process, this is how I'm going to be going about it. So, like I say, every part that can move on its own layer. It's also worth pointing out that I'm just drawing my arm and a leg, so one arm and one leg. And the reason I'm doing that is because you want basically, they're just going to be duplicated. You want them to be the same size and the same length, so you'll be able to animate them in the same way. And so I just need to draw one of each, and then I'll be able to duplicate them both. Now, I'm not a fantastic artist, and faces aren't always my strong suits, but I'm just making use of the tools that I've got. So, like the smoothing tool, then that's always quite a nice thing in Sketchbook. I know they've got like a similar version in Photoshop, finally, but yeah, like sensitive brushes as well. Pressure sensitive brushes can sometimes give you a nice sort of effect as well. I'm putting the eyes on a separate layer, and I'll be putting the eyebrows as well on a separate layer. Just because what's moved does separately, depending on how detailed you want to get with this, you could always put your both eyebrows on separate layers, so be able to move each of those independently. Uh, I'm doing two mouths as well, in case I want like an open mouth and a closed mouth. And it's always useful to, like I say, try and keep your layers organized as well as you're going through this. So with the hair, I wasn't, because I'd already sort of merged the layers. It meant I had to sort of colour in on the same layer, so I wasn't able to use the same trick as I made earlier. But you know, you can still work around it. So I think at this point, what I'm gonna go ahead and do is move into Photoshop, just because it's a bit easier to rename in Photoshop and like organize your layers. At least I find it easy with like a just the mouse and keyboard. So at this point, I'm pretty much done with the art. So it's just going to be a case of just fine tweaking, duplicating, and renaming. Again, you could do those in Sketchbook, but like I say, for me, I'm just moving in Photoshop. Whichever software is your preference, do you prefer working in? Photoshop's, it's got the benefits of, like I say, being able to grab everything quite easily, especially with a mouse and move your layers about. I do also notice that the scale's probably a bit off, like maybe the arms are a bit long and the legs are a bit stumpy. So I can use the transform tools to change those. So here you can sort of see, because of how I drew it and the pressure sensitivity, you could sort of see like a fadedness around some of the paint. So what I'm doing is I'm just sort of duplicating the layer a whole bunch and like remerging them, and that sort of gets rid of any places where the paint's not gone on very heavy. At this point, really, it's sort of just like fine tweaking and any sort of touch ups you want to do. Just using the ruler there to make sure the eyes are on the same points on level. I noticed as well that the guy is um, got no trousers on, so I'm gonna draw some quick simple shorts on. Didn't really think about he wanted any trousers, so I'm just having to add a bit of add some shorts. And that's pretty much the process really. It's just a case of making sure you keep your layers organized. Use good naming conventions. So I use like arm upper, left arm upper. Left arm, left hand. So and any part that really wants to be animated wants to be on its own layer. So any part that's going to move, give it its own layer, and yeah, make sure you're working as the PSD Photoshop document, because that's what we're going to be taking into After Effects. And I hope you've found that useful. And thanks for watching.